Hello there, welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsie, here to bring you profoundly grateful to all those who showed their support for the coronation. Tens of thousands of street parties have been held across the UK to continue the celebrations. The annual event run by the Eden Project communities said 67,000 big lunch events were planned today, and the royal family were out in force to show their thanks. Sisters Princess Beatrice and Eugenie were at an event in Buckinghamshire, and the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward, and his wife Sophie stopped by a lunch in Surrey. Well-wishers said the parties brought out the best of British.
It's lovely to see all the people and the balloons out and everything. Yeah, excellent.
It doesn't happen often enough to get people to get together, and they should. Like a day like this, great.
It's a very nice, creative thing to bring us all together to celebrate this, because it's a one-in-a-lifetime thing. I don't think I'm going to experience it again.
We think it's wonderful. There's so many people have come to support it, and we've even got, nice fine weather after all the rain.
And what did you make of the coronation?
We loved it. We loved every minute of it, especially seeing little Louis singing the national anthem all the way through.
Yeah, I was impressed, yeah. I'm actually proud to be British, don't I?
The First Lady of the US, Jill Biden, was one of the special guests hosted at the big lunch by the Prime Minister and his wife outside Downing Street. Recipients of the Points of Light Award, which was given to ordinary people doing extraordinary things for their community, were also in attendance, as were some Ukrainian refugees and their hosts. Well, the coronation concert is due to kick off in an hour's time. 20,000 people will join the newly crowned King and Queen at Windsor Castle for the event. Earlier, the Prince and Princess of Wales surprised the crowds queuing up for the event. In the party spirit, William was heard jokingly asking people if they'd brought alcohol with them to celebrate. Well, ticket holders are making their way along the long walk to the castle, where organisers are making final preparations. Take That, Katy Perry and Lionel Richie will all be performing, with special appearances from Tom Cruise, Dame Joan Collins and Sir Tom Jones. The host, Hugh Bonneville, says it's going to be a great night.
There are so many standout moments from what I've seen. There's a beautiful poem composed especially for the event. There's a remarkable finale, both visually and orally, and some astonishing pop performances along the way, and as well as classical performances from Andrea Bocelli and Sabrina Terfel. So I think there really is something for everyone tonight. It's going to be magical.
Amnesty International says the Metropolitan Police may have misused new powers after 52 people were arrested ahead of the coronation yesterday. The force says they were taken into custody for an array of offences in line with relevant legislation. But the chief executive of anti-monarchy group Republic, Graham Smith, was held for nearly 16 hours, and he claims there's no longer a right to protest in the UK after the Public Order Bill was passed earlier this year. You're up to date on GB News. Now it's time for Free Speech Nation.
Anti-monarchists are arrested at the coronation, a comedy club no platforms a leading SNP politician, and a cartoon dog is fat-shamed. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. On tonight's show, the comedy legend John Cleese will be joining me to discuss his career and why Monty Python and Fawlty Towers were not universally well received at first. I'll be entering the minefield that is COVID-19 vaccine safety and efficacy as Fraser Myers and the MP Andrew Bridgen settle a score, an attempt to settle the science once and for all. Also, after the Stand Comedy Club cancelled a booking with SNP politician Joanna Cherry, we'll be speaking to the poet Jenny Lindsay, who has also been targeted by activists for her gender-critical views. I've got a lovely studio guest tonight. I've got Bruce Devlin and Steve N. Allen. Welcome both. And Bruce, of course, you're down from Scotland for the weekend, so you must have caught the coronation.
Well, I caught the rain.
You did? Caught pneumonia?
Yeah, we got lost and we were a wee bit cold, and I did say this last night. I said to one of the volunteers, I said, are we on the official procession route? And he went, for what? I was like, oh,
There were other
okay.
things going on. There was an origami convention. around
Yeah,
the time.
exactly. Yeah, finger knitting.
Finger knitting. yeah.
Macrame.
You're very much into that kind.
Yes.
How are you, Steve? Did you watch the Coronation at all?
I watched most of it. I mean, the bits that I didn't see, they'll do highlights on stamps or things, won't they?
They will.
So I can watch it that way.
Exactly. Yeah. I wouldn't worry about it. And we've got a lovely studio audience as well here. So let's get some questions from them. So our first question is coming from David. Where is David?
David's here.
Hello,
Good evening.
David.
Thank you very much. Is the right to protest now an optional extra?
OK, David, being contentious from the start. There we go. This is, of course, members of the public who were arrested yesterday, and this is Scotland Yard, of course, being accused of being a bit alarming, a bit heavy-handed. These are new powers of arrest, Steve. So these just came in just a couple of days ago, and what I thought that when I saw the images, it was a bit disturbing because there were just people with placards, but they hadn't done anything. They just had the placards and they were arrested. That to me isn't good.
Yeah, they came prepared and armed to protest later, which might have been a nuisance to someone, so it's lock-up time. The problem is these new laws were brought in clearly now so that no one minded because, oh, it feels mentally linked to the coronation.
Yes.
These laws are in. So until there's another coronation, the next time there's a protest that you're in favour of, you'll be annoyed about these laws.
This is the problem, Bruce, isn't it? Like, I think rushing through this kind of legislation, it worries me because I believe in free speech, I believe in the right to protest, irrespective of whether I agree or not. The idea that the police are just... of course anti-monarchists are going to protest on this day. Of course they are.
Well, yeah, because they're anti-monarchists.
Right.
That's why.
Sort of their shtick.
And I think, judging by his fingers, and we discussed this last night, I'm not too sure it won't be that long before we have another coronation. Let's just leave that there.
For goodness sake.
But my point would be, I thought they were just arresting the placards, because the placards just seem to be going in a meat wagon and not people. So I didn't get that, and I hadn't had a drink yesterday, so it was just all very confusing.
I think they were definitely arresting people, but I mean, their justification, they were saying that some of them had brought implements that could disrupt. But I think...
Like what?
Yeah.
Well,
anything could disrupt.
devices, I think they said.
Anything could disrupt if you try.
Public could disrupt.
If you try hard enough, anything could disrupt. But the problem is that they can also search you without any justification, just in case you have flyers. Now, anyone could have anything on them. So we've also brought in this rule where the police can search you for no good reason, which could be abused. The key with a good law is to make sure that you can't abuse it because it's worded correctly and can only be applied when we think it should be applied.
What I don't understand about this, I mean, a lot of people I speak to, they love the monarchy, and but they think it's fine to arrest these protesters. But I think if you do love your country, you also love the freedoms that we have, and surely that's part of it, you know? I would have thought.
I don't think that by the way, the protest did happen. Some protests happened.
They did.
Didn't ruin the day, did it? It was the whole mixture of you need to have the voice represented of those people who don't like it.
But they look quite silly as well. Just saying "not my king," bleating "not my king." It looked a bit pathetic as well, you know. So fine, let them do it. Anyway, we're going to move on now. We've got a question from James. Where is James?
Here.
Hello, James.
Hello. I was wondering, does the panel think that the country has rejected Rishi Sunak and the current Conservative Party?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's quite clearly. I mean, what was it,
some of them have,
1,000 seats? I mean, this is an interesting one, Bruce, isn't it? Because it is, of course, a crushing defeat for the Tories. And, you know, credit to Starmer, you know, he really has... this is clearly a victory for him. He's won back a lot of those red wall areas. It's looking very much like he's definitely going to be the next Prime Minister. Are you happy about that?
I'm not really that bothered, to be quite honest with you, because it'll happen whether I'm bothered about it or not.
Well, you've got Humza Yousaf anyway.
I'm very busy with Humza, who was down yesterday wearing a lovely Siobhan Mackenzie kilt.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I know her.
Oh.
I know Lorraine Kelly, but more of that later.
I mean, like, you know, it's a particularly bad defeat. It's very interesting, though. A lot of people I know who vote Conservative normally, they don't even like the Conservatives at the moment, so they're clearly doing something wrong.
No, but the thing is, I do feel a tiny bit, not that sorry for Rishi, because obviously he's very rich, but I do feel sorry that he's carrying a can for Truss and May and all that kind of stuff, because he's just the figurehead at the moment, isn't he? So
he's just...
They aren't really... You know, he did say in debates, Liz, don't do that. What did Liz do? Once she'd opened her pork markets, she did it.
Yeah, well, this is the problem. It was a poison chalice. It was a poison chalice, wasn't it? You know, so what, you feeling sorry for Rishi, Steve?
Not at all, really. I mean, all of the policies that he's talking about, improving things, that, and the unspoken bit is, they have failed to improve for 10 years, or were they making over the last 10 years. So really, this happens with governments. If you're in power for so long, you have responsibility for a lot of the actual reality of a nation. So what my favourite thing that happened over the last few days is the way that they managed to spin it. It doesn't matter how many seats they lost in these local elections, they would say, well, of course, it could have been worse.
Yes.
Therefore...
Well, they'll always say
I know,
that,
there is no no amount of defeat that they wouldn't somehow reframe as. Yeah, but we're all still alive.
A nuclear apocalypse. So it could, yes, it could have been worse, but this is terrible, you know.
Yeah, it is terrible, and it would be terrible because you actually have responsibility for the state of the things that you're trying to fix. Doesn't seem believable that you will do it.
Isn't democracy a great thing? Holding people to account. Fantastic. OK, we're going to move on to another question now. This one comes from Danny. Hello, Danny.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm all right.
Brilliant. I wondered, is teaching kids about exercise fat-phobic?
Oh, I love this story. So there is this very popular cartoon called Bluey. I don't know if you know this. It's a cartoon dog. I don't know if we've got an image of Bluey, but there was a scene which was removed from an episode in which Bluey's parents, who are also dogs, discuss how they need to do some exercise and lose weight, OK? And there's an image. There he is. So there's the dad dog holding his stomach going, oh, I'm a bit porky at the moment. And Bluey's saying, yeah, you are. You know, put the fork down from time to time. But the thing is, it's a bit this is a bit of a weird thing to cut this scene out, isn't it?
But the thing is, we've had all this before with Peppa Pig. She's a horrible little girl that keeps calling her... But she keeps calling her dad fat and laughing at him and all that kind of thing.
Well, I've never seen Peppa Pig, but it sounds like I don't want to.
This is a complete rip. This should be, like, challenged in the way that Ed Sheeran was about music and things like that. They've lifted the same story.
You think... Oh, so you're more worried about plagiarism in this?
Well, I think it's all a load of nonsense, to be perfectly honest with you. But as a fat child, I took Latin so as not to get slagged off in the gym hall.
Oh, really?
Honestly, that's on a set play true.
I should have done that. Why didn't I think of that?
It was the one standard grade I passed.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Couldn't get maths, but got Latin.
OK, good for you.
Fear of fat-shaming works, is what we've learned.
Well, that's what Bruce is suggesting. I'm worried about this sort of stuff. So you get a lot of sort of social justice messaging within cartoons, you know. We even had... Now, the Pink News did a report on Bluey, on this very thing, last year, where they criticised it for saying there weren't enough gender-diverse or dogs of colour in Bluey, and Bluey is actually blue. So, I mean, that's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bluey. I've got a one-year-old,
oh, it's a good show,
I watch a lot of Bluey. Great theme tune. I've not clocked this episode, but reading...
Because they censored it. You won't see it.
I guess I'll never see it now. But reading it, that the dad's worried about his weight and says, maybe I should do some exercise, and apparently the mum says, yeah, maybe you should.
Right.
Ooh, now, I'm surprised the dad doesn't call the mum the B word, because they are dogs, you can get away with it. And maybe I mean, in part, I don't mind that you edited it out because, you know, not that you did it, but they edited it out. But also, we should know that people worry about their weight. You can't pretend that everyone magically loves the weight that they're at.
And there are dysfunctional families, like this sounds like. This sounds like they hate each other.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be a divorce at one point, a divorce subplot.
Are you saying they're not pure breeds? Is this the problem?
All I'm saying is that there are two children, one's blue, one's brown. No one's doing a DNA test, though.
Oh, wow. Bring back Jeremy Kyle.
Interesting. OK, well, let's move on to another question now. I think we've covered Bluey. This one from Rita. Hi, Rita.
Hi. When it comes to reparations for slavery, is an apology ever going to be enough?
Yes, so this is relating to the royal family as well, because earlier this week, Aboriginal Olympian Nova Peris said change begins with listening. She joined other voices from across the Commonwealth to demand that King Charles III makes a formal apology for the effects of British colonialism. I find this very confusing, Steve, because, you know, ultimately, it would be a big surprise to me if aristocrats from this country from many hundreds of years ago weren't in some way complicit with the slave trade.
Yeah.
They're all dead, and Charles hasn't done any of that. So I don't see the point of this particularly.
Although I suppose if you were to point to a family that really carries on, it brings its past with it. The royal family is a really good example.
But they no longer have slaves, or at least not many.
That's true.
Yes.
Well made. Good point, well made. I mean, she's demanding that they do talks, and I think an apology could be a really empty gesture. And if there's one thing royalty is good for, it's empty gestures, isn't it?
Yeah,
they are effectively a token.
But also, you've got to be careful when you make these accusations. We don't know anything about her past, her ancestors. You know, Jack the Ripper could be there for all she knows. Like, we don't know. All of our ancestors are a mix of good and bad people who did good and bad things.
Do you think she's trying to just get an apology for, like, the actual bloodline lineage, what they did, or the concept of the royals?
So, well, that would be a different thing, wouldn't it? Is that a fair point?
Oh, I'd like an apology from the royals.
Would you?
Yeah, I just would.
Do you deserve one, Bruce? Have you been oppressed?
So, yeah, no,
you seem quite oppressed.
Yeah, no,
me.
I have. Princess Anne was rude to me at a buffet in Mingle, and I'm still waiting for an apology.
No, I think she should apologise to you.
No, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I really do enjoy Prince Louis because I think he is channeling Princess Margaret.
Is he?
I think he's that kind of character, yeah.
I haven't
Do you
really
remember the Platty Jubes, and he was all badly behaved and wouldn't pay attention and stuff, and I thought, oof, good for you.
Well,
have a gym. I know you're only 5, but come on!
I haven't really been paying attention to the Next Generation.
He stuck his tongue out, I think.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, he means business.
Isn't that treason?
Probably.
Isn't that treason? Can you be treasonous if you're one of the family? Of course
For
you can.
sticking out your tongue?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think you can. I mean, I think the way they're treating Harry is... It's funny with Harry, because you notice when he was sitting in the pews, he was stuck behind Princess Anne's feather. He had a feathery cap, and they'd almost deliberately positioned them so that her feathered cap would obscure his ginger face. I think that was the point, wasn't it?
Ginger face? I think his hair's ginger, not his face is ginger.
Yeah, well, OK, I was being poetic.
That's harsh to the ginger people.
No, but, you know, I think that was an interesting way of dealing with it, you know.
What, popping up millinery wear? That's the thing. Well, if anything, then, what you should do, because there are other gingers, is Beatrice and Eugenie, as I'd mentioned last night, they're prone to a bad hat. So if Harry and Meghan turn up, just stick them in front of them then.
There we go, problem solved. Well, look, we're gonna go away for just a few minutes. We've got the legend that is John Cleese, who's going to be joining us in the studio to discuss why Monty Python wasn't everyone's cup of tea. Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Now, my first guest tonight needs no introduction, so I won't bother with one. It's John Cleese. John, welcome back.
Lovely back.
Thrilled to have you back again.
Yep.
And, of course, we're working on a show together at the moment, which is fantastic.
He's the producer.
Yeah, would you believe it?
And he's half my age, isn't that lovely?
I wanted to talk to you, though, about... Well, let's start with the Coronation. Did you watch it? Did you enjoy it?
Well,
This is a little embarrassing, but it is also kind of funny. And this is absolutely true. My wife, known as the fish because she swims like a fish, watches television always. She gets into bed with all the cushions and all the cats. Got to have all 3 cats there. Then she watches, and she said, come on, come in and watch. And I went in, I sat on the bed, lay down, and I sort of looked at the screen, and I lost it.
As in?
I laughed. I couldn't stop laughing. This is absolutely...
So what did you find funny about it?
Well, I just looked at it, all these people in these silly costumes and all taking everything so seriously. I thought it's a Python sketch. Once I realised that it was a Python sketch, I could not stop laughing. I wasn't laughing at any of the people because they were all playing their parts really well, you know, but I just... It's so silly.
But it's true, every now and then you just catch a glimpse of tradition. Why do we do the things we do? It's
yeah,
bizarre.
well, I don't know why we do it. And I know it's wonderful that there's a crown,
yes,
you know, that's been, I don't know, put on people's heads for 800 years or that kind of thing. But did you notice that marvellous man, Justin, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who I met 2 weeks ago, and I think he's one of the best human beings I've ever met. He should have practiced putting the crown on. You remember doing all this? Whoops.
It is. He needed a spirit level, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it is difficult. John, speaking of Monty Python, now, you said an interesting thing to me, which I was absolutely fascinated by, is that when you initially pitched Monty Python, you sort of went in without quite knowing what it was going to be.
Well, yeah, this is what's so interesting about our business, is that people always assume that if something was successful, it was always going to be successful.
Yes.
And it's completely untrue. But anyway, that's true. Chapman and I, he was studying for medicine, and I just married Connie Booth and didn't want to be out of the house all the time for the first year in London for her. So I was writing with him all the time. We used to watch this very funny kids show called Do Not Adjust Your Set. David Jason was in it, but also Palin and Jones and Eric Idle and Terry Gilliam. And we used to watch it, and we'd met because we all worked for Frosty.
Of course.
And one day I said to Graham, why don't we do a show with these guys? And we rang them up, and they said, yeah, all right. And we went to a man called Barry Took, who used to write with Marty Feldman, and he fixed a meeting for us, and we went in to see the head of Light Entertainment, who was Michael Mills. And we knew Michael a little bit.
Yeah.
And he sat down, he said, I gather you guys would like to do a series. And we said, yes, we would. And he said, well, what do you propose doing? And there was a silence because we hadn't discussed it. Can you believe that?
So did you just wing it, just sort of make it up?
Well, it was so embarrassing. We said, well, we thought we'd do a comedy show with humorous things in it. And jokes.
Jokes? So quite radical,
intended to make people laugh. And he said, well, you're going to have guest stars. And we said, are we going to have this? He said, well, what about music? We said, we haven't really thought about music.
And yet he offered you the...
Well, he looked at us, and I thought, this is the most embarrassing thing I've ever done. This is the most important person in my professional life, and I make a complete fool of him. And he looked at us, and he said, oh, go away and make 13 programs. Breathtaking. I mean, that's never happened in the history of television, that a guy has commissioned 13 programs, not a pilot, but 13 programs, without having the slightest idea what he was going to get.
It wouldn't
and without
happen.
the people knowing the slightest idea what they were going to be doing.
It wouldn't happen today, would it?
Of course it wouldn't.
Sort of...
Well, the nearest thing is our series.
Yes.
Because they came along and they said to me, we're KGB News. And I said, what do you want? I said, never heard of you, what do you want? They said, you can, would you like to do 10 one-hour shows? And I said, well, doing what? They said, anything you like. I said, what? They said, anything you like, you do what you like. I mean, nobody's ever had an offer like that.
And we should say it'll be out later in the year. We don't know precisely when.
We don't know when.
We don't know.
And we're starting to record on Wednesday.
On Wednesday. Very exciting stuff. I did just want to say, because we have got a clip from Monty Python just to remind people of the kind of thing that you got up to. If we can show that.
We thank thee, Lord, but in thy mouth. Come on, then. What? Have at you! You are indeed brave, Sir Knight, but the fight is mine. Oh, had enough, eh? Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound. Look, stop that! Chicken! Chicken! Look, I'll have your leg. Right! Right, I'll do you for that. You what? Come.
Fantastic. And that's and John, that's you in the armour.
Well, actually, the truth is, it's me in the army till I have my leg chopped off.
Oh, and then they get a stunt double.
Then we got a monopod, a one-legged person,
yes,
who was really, really good at hopping. And what I loved, his name was Richard Burton. And he was a silversmith in the City of London.
Fantastic.
And he took over the hopping. But up to that time... Now, what's so funny about that is that I watched that film with an audience, Holy Grail. I watched it probably 40 times. That is the scene that gets the most hysterical laughter. A scene with a man having his arms and legs chopped. You see, it all depends on the context. Do you see what I mean? And the problem with a lot of the critics of comedy is they don't understand the idea of context.
Yes, absolutely. And so making that film, that was a bit of a departure because you were then suddenly developing big, long narratives. And, of course, the sketches in Monty Python's Flying Circus
we were very bad at narratives. We got it right once, and that was Life of Brian.
Life of Brian, yes, absolutely. You don't think you got it right in Holy Grail? I thought you did.
Well, no, it was just a lot of sketches and a terrible ending. People say, why is this a disappointing ending? And the answer is we couldn't think of anything better.
Now, at the ending, the police come on and just arrest our cast.
Right. It's a terrible ending.
But let's talk a little about, just quickly about Life of Brian, because Life of Brian does feel so coherent and so sort of narrative-wise.
It was a very, very good movie, I think. And it was recently voted by international film critics 11th funniest film ever made. Holy Grail was 9th.
Yes.
So we got 2.
You got 2 in there.
Pretty good.
And yeah, it's absolutely hilarious.
But of course it all happened because of a naughty thing that Eric said. Because after the success of Holy Grail, we were in an Indian restaurant with a journalist, and he said, "What are you going to do next?" And Eric, who hadn't talked about it with any of us, said, "We're going to make a film called Jesus Christ's Lust for Glory."
And he just said it. Came out of nowhere, and then you were committed.
We all screamed with laughter, and suddenly said, "Actually, it's rather a good idea. Nobody's ever made a comedy set in the Holy Land at the time of Christ." Yes. I mean, you know?
Exactly.
It's an unusual subject for a comedy. But actually, I've adapted it. I've done a version of it for the London stage, which I think we'll be making next year.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And then quickly, just we haven't got much time, but I want to talk to you briefly about Fawlty Towers because, you know, it's such a classic. It comes up again and again as the best sitcom of all time. And yet, not everyone was convinced at the start.
Oh, no, the interesting thing is you never know whether what you're going to do is going to be successful. I mean, I've been doing comedy 60 years, and I know now that whether something's funny or not, but I don't know whether it's that funny or that funny. I really don't. I have to do it in front of an audience. And I always say my co-writers are the audience.
Yes.
But no success was ever guaranteed. I mean, when Python came out for the first time, no critic picked it out as being good.
That seems amazing to me.
The head of department, Tom Sloan, bumped into the director in an elevator, and he said, "What is this Python thing? Is it supposed to be funny? I think it's awful." Now, he was the head of the department. Then, 4 weeks later, when the heads of the departments met to discuss the new programs, 6 out of 8 of them didn't like it. And sort of thought it ought never not to be done. So the thing that you learn as you get old, and it's not just true of show business, but it's very true of show business, is that the people at the top have almost no idea what they're doing. or what they're talking about. And successful programs usually succeed despite them.
And how did they feel about Fawlty Towers? Were the executives on board with that?
Well, the guy who commissioned it, a lovely man called Jimmy Gilbert, I'd worked with on the Frost programs, he commissioned it. But after the first show, he said, "John, you're going to have to get them out of the hotel more." Completely wrong. Completely wrong. And he was the head of the department. So you kind of get to the point as you get older when you simply know that they have no idea what they're talking about. I wrote a script for a woman in Disney, and she read the first script. She said, well, we don't get scripts like this. This is 75% of the way there.
Yes.
And then she gave me 6 notes, and I emailed her, do you want anything else changed apart from these 6? Didn't hear back. We changed those 6. We went on holiday. We found when we got back they were looking for new writers. Well, what? Well, you didn't take any notice of the script, notes we sent you. No? I looked at my co-writer. He said, I didn't show them to you. I knew you'd get cross. And she said, but these are the things I want done. And I looked at them and I said, you know, I'm awfully sorry. I don't think I can do this. And she said, you can't do it? I said, I don't think so. And she said, why not? And I said, well, I don't know how to make it worse. I would be trying to make it better.
Yes.
And that's not what you're after. And no idea what she was doing. Yeah?
It's incredible. And just finally, because we don't have much time, but please tell us what happened when Fawlty Towers almost went to America, because they were trying to change it.
Oh, they did it 3 times. They tried to reproduce it in America. They failed every time. The last time, I hadn't been told. I bumped into some people, and they said, oh, you John Cleese, we just bought the rights to make Fawlty Towers in America. And I said, ching, ching, you know, oh. And I said, are you going to make these changes? Because Americans aren't used to little family hotels. They said, no. And I said, well, he said, we have changed something. I said, what's that? They said, we've written Basil out. Absolutely true.
Just trust the creatives. I think that's the way. John, we are out of time, but thanks so much for coming on today. You're not going. Oh, well. I wish you could...
Sorry, I'm not going. I like this lot.
I wish it could just be you for the whole show, but it can't be, unfortunately. But coming up on Free Speech Nation, after the spiked columnist Fraser Myers, trying to do a serious link here, John, Fraser Myers called out MP Andrew Bridgen for his opinions on the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine. The two of them are going to go to head-to-head here in the studio. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts
Moss?
of Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
From this. Join us here.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So, later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my wonderful panel, Bruce Devlin and Steve N. Allen. And we're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems at all, however personal, doesn't matter, we're not squeamish, just email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll do our level best to answer all of your issues. There was a time in history when the term anti-vaxxer or the phrase gone down a rabbit hole were consigned mainly to websites dedicated to conspiracy theories. But since the pandemic, an entire community of people who doubt the efficacy and safety of the COVID-19 vaccine has emerged. They point to data around vaccine harms to strengthen their calls for an inquiry into the role Big Pharma has played during the rollout. But others argue that the millions who are vaccinated and go about living their lives as normal suggest that the extent of the adverse effects has been exaggerated. Now, earlier this week, Spiked columnist Fraser Myers entered the argument with an article entitled The Delusions of Andrew Bridgen, referring to the MP who was expelled from the Conservative Party for what he called raising concerns about vaccine safety. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome both Andrew Bridgen and Fraser Myers to Free Speech Nation. Thank you both. And thank you both ever so much for coming, and particularly because I think it's very difficult, it takes a lot of integrity to face your critics in the flesh, but also to face those who you have criticised in the flesh, and I think it's really great that you're both here. I'm going to come to you first, Fraser, because you wrote the article. Can you tell us a little bit about the article and why you felt you needed to write it?
Yes, I've been worried for a while about the rise of anti-vaccine conspiracy theorists, and for a while at least it seemed as if this was just a thing on the internet. You know, maybe you could ignore it, maybe it's a bit harmless, just a lot of a fringe, but a very vocal fringe. But now we have an MP among that ranks. You know, that's Andrew Bridgen sitting right here. Andrew will say he's just raising concerns about vaccine safety. He'll say he's just asking questions that others daren't ask. But actually, you know, a lot of what he says is really, really indefensible. So, for instance, he has compared the vaccine rollout to a crime against humanity, possibly the worst since the Holocaust. He has said that the pandemic is planned. He said that the virus and the vaccine were developed by the United States Department of Defense, and that we can soon expect our politicians and medical officials to be arrested. He said that the vaccine harms are so bad that they are the cause of the majority of excess deaths in the UK. Now, that would mean that they're more dangerous than COVID, more dangerous than the 7 million long NHS waiting list. Now, if those aren't anti-vax conspiracy theories, then I don't know what is.
Well, let's ask Andrew Bridgen himself. What do you make of those specific allegations?
Guilty as charged, and I've got the science that will back all of that up. What do we know about the vaccine rollout? That there's more yellow card reports of harms from the novel experimental mRNA vaccines, or the COVID-19 vaccines, than there has been for all conventional vaccines for the last 40 years. Figures from Florida, 1,600% increase in reports of vaccine side effects and the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. Only a 400% increase in vaccination. 400 doesn't go into 16. You know, it's just not how it's going to work.
So, Andrew...
Four times the problems with these vaccines. They've never gone through phase 3 trials. They are experimental. And we were rolling them out to children. There's no children, unhealthy children, young children that have ever died of COVID, but there is clear side effects from the vaccines. Why are we doing this?
Fraser, are these experimental?
No, they're not experimental. They're not gene therapy either, which is like a common thing that anti-vaxxers... Yeah, they're not, because they don't actually alter people's DNA, so they're not classed as gene therapy. They're not experimental because they have gone through clinical trials. The phase 3 trials have concluded. So it's just not
But you're not
true.
denying that people have had adverse effects?
Well, all medicines have side effects, and no medicine is entirely 100% effective. But what we're talking about here is, you point to, say, for instance, let's talk about the yellow card scheme, for instance. This is a way of people reporting the adverse reactions they've had from the vaccine. Now, the implication from Andrew is that this is a crime against humanity, that these people are practically at death's door. Actually, the vast majority of these reports are to do with people having sore arms, people feeling dizzy, people feeling nauseous, not the kind of thing that is going to have long-term adverse health impacts. So,
Andrew, what do you just to bring you in?
So grossly exaggerated.
Do you take Fraser's point that sometimes these things are conflated? You know, the harms that are lesser and the harms that are more.
Okay, so they're just normal drugs like all the others, and they've been fully tested. In that case, why do the vaccine manufacturers acquire full immunity from the harms that their products may cause before they'll release them? India is very shortly going to be the largest population in the world, the biggest market for drugs in the world. Pfizer have never rolled out any of their experimental vaccines in India because the Indian government won't give them immunity from prosecution for the harms. These are not new drugs, that they've been now rolled out for over 2 years. Billions and billions of doses have gone out, but they still require that immunity from prosecution. How can they be safe?
Fraser?
Well, as you say, yes, they've been being rolled out over the past 2 years, and we just haven't seen anything like the scale of harms that you're talking about. And conversely, we have seen that they have saved lives. I mean, back in 2021, when the rollout was, getting underway, you could see how these vaccines completely severed the link between COVID cases and COVID deaths. I mean, it was just undeniable. So I find it really, really disturbing that someone can take something as brilliant as these vaccines, this is incredible human scientific achievement, and basically trash them as evil, as part of some kind of plot. I don't know whether you think it's to make money.
Let's be fair to you, Andrew, because I think you should address that directly. Do you believe that it is a plot, that the vaccines have been created?
I think people have profited from these immensely. Yes, I do. But I mean, my degree is in biology, biochemistry, genetics, and a bit of virology. I mean, what are your qualifications in science to make the... Did you read any of the 32 papers I posted when I gave my first speech in December last year, on the 13th of December? That was all backed up with 32 scientific papers. Not a breath of it from the mainstream media, because they couldn't take it apart. The science was unarguable. At that time, the government wanted to vaccinate babies. They pulled back from that to only the over 50s and immunocompromised. And after my speech on the 17th of March, when I showed the number needed to vaccinate with a booster to keep one person out of hospital, which in, I think, the 40 to 49-year-olds was 932,000, with 1 in 800 having an adverse event, 1,100 people in hospital keep one person out infected with COVID at huge cost to the taxpayer. Then they pushed it to only the over 75s. If what I was talking about wasn't scientifically provable, why did the government move its position?
I suppose people are interested in, obviously we can talk about the statistics and the various studies, and that's very important that we have open discussions about that. I think some of the concerns that have been raised and what...
This is called Free Speech Nation. Yeah. I'm raising concerns, legitimate concerns, and growing concerns by the public. And if you can't do that in Parliament, where can you
But I suppose it's the idea... I mean, I might
backed
be wrong...
up by scientific papers.
Fraser, am I suggesting, though, that when you said it's the plot element, the idea that it's a kind of...
Well, you're changing the terrain of the argument constantly. Yeah, you're saying it's like effectively comparing it to the Holocaust. In other places on the James Delingpole podcast, you said that the mandatory vaccinations for nurses was like the Nazis. How many scientific...
That's against the Nuremberg Convention at the end of the Second World War. You can't force someone to have a medication they don't want.
Convention, if not to say that these are a bit
Andrew, do you think that just leaving aside the actual substance of the argument, but the language, the idea of invoking the Nazis, invoking the Holocaust, that's a legitimate criticism, isn't it, to say that maybe that's not a sensible rhetorical approach?
I was re-quoting a paper from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem
but you agreed with it.
by a Jewish
approvingly.
professor.
You quoted that approvingly. You didn't quote it to say, oh my God, look at this idiot.
But it can't have been that bad,
what an outrageous
because
thing to
I'll
say.
let you into a secret, Andrew. I've never had the codes to my own Twitter. My tweets are all moderated by my staff and have been for the last 12 years, and that tweet was moderated, approved and posted by my Conservative Association chairman.
Right.
But I was still thrown out the Conservative Party.
Well, you know, I'm not trying to... I think everyone should have complete free speech in terms of what they say. That's not what I'm saying. All I was suggesting is, I think what Fraser's article was saying is that some of the rhetoric might not help the cause that you yourself are advancing. I think that's a fair point.
There's a lot of willful blindness out there. The fact is, Big Pharma is a huge lobbying power. You know, 86% of the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency, which authorises these medicines, is funded by Big Pharma. The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, in their personal declarations of interest, they declared over £1 billion of investments in Big Pharma. We've had our regulators captured. And that's just not healthy.
Fraser, you can understand why some people are sceptical about all of this, you know, because there haven't been answers to all of the questions that people wanted.
I think that, you know, we lived through a really terrible period during the COVID lockdowns. I think there were a lot of terrible mistakes. I completely opposed the lockdown. I thought it was a mad kind of authoritarian experiment, essentially. And I think that has, people, you know, often people don't see cock-up where they're, you know, or they see conspiracy where there's cock-up.
Yes.
And people are, you know...
The only problem with saying it's cock-up, not conspiracy, what you've got to bear in mind is that all the governments across the Western world, the so-called democracies and others, made exactly the same cock-up at exactly the same time on exactly the same issue.
Well, they followed each other and they were kind of panicked into these decisions. And as someone who is critical of the lockdown and as someone who desperately does not want this thing to happen again, you know, for someone like Andrew to essentially, you know, espouse these are conspiracy theories.
If you don't want it to happen again, isn't the best thing we could do is find out who paid for and developed the COVID-19 virus, in which labs, and hold them criminally to account? Because that was not a natural virus. I mean, the spike protein, a big chunk of it has come out of HIV, and 4 of the amino acids, which is 12 base pairs of mRNA, in the spike protein, the American government have got a patent on it. It's not in any other coronavirus in the world. Why can't we find out where it's come from and who's funded it, and hold them criminally to account to make sure everyone gets a message so you don't do this again to us?
It's really important for people to realise that what Andrew says sounds scientific. It's kind of pseudo-scientific. It's, you know, listing all these papers, misrepresenting the data, and, you know, essentially it is a conspiracy theory. It has no basis in reality. There's nothing.
I'll send you the papers.
Well, you can send me as many papers as you like, but, you know, a lot of these are complete outliers. But Andrew, in terms of vaccine safety and things like that. So how do they prove a plot?
Let's try and bring it down to something specific, because you mentioned, Andrew, that you want to follow the money and you want to find out who's funding what America's involvement. And you did tweet to say that you had heard that the vaccine and the virus were developed by the DoD at Fort Detrick.
Yep.
Do you stand by that? Because you didn't provide in the tweet any evidence. But
I travelled out under my own powers at Christmas and New Year and spent the whole time in Washington speaking to scientists and elected representatives over there, and they confirmed everything about that.
But do you understand why people are concerned about that? Because when you tweet something that's so alarmist and extreme, but there's no evidence there for people to see...
Four of the amino acids in the spike protein, the American government had a patent on, and they gave it in 2014 to Moderna.
But you suggest that the virus originated at Fort Detrick. That can't be right.
I think a lot of the work was done there before it was shipped out by Anthony Fauci to Wuhan, and he funded the final research. What I don't know is whether it was released by accident or on purpose. I don't know how we'd ever find that out.
I'm happy for Andrew to discredit himself live by saying all this rubbish. It's just... You need to, you know, wake up a little bit. This is not real. You've fallen down a real rabbit hole here. And it's, you know, it's very worrying that you're a member of Parliament. I think it's quite scary that, you know, British public are being represented by...
Anthony Fauci funded it. That's all come out in congressional and Senate hearings under oath in America. You watch the hearings, it's all there. The former head of the CDC said that that's what happened. Anthony Fauci funded it.
But that doesn't...
Sorry, they have not confirmed that the virus was made by America, by the Department of Defense.
Well, he took it from America and did the research in Wuhan.
But you haven't confirmed... Like, I would love to see the evidence of the virus being created at Fort Detrick, because it sounds like a variation of an old conspiracy theory about AIDS being funded created at Fort Detrick. That was an old conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theorist that Barack Obama, 11 days before he handed over to Trump, made gain-of-function research legal in America again. Why would he do that?
So the thing
Why
is,
would you do that?
You take a grain of truth where it's like, perhaps the virus leaked from a lab, for instance. It could have been made in a lab. And then you extrapolate it to say that there is a conspiracy against
But do you think it was made in a lab or not?
To say
was it made in a lab or not?
There are side effects of COVID, and then take that to say it's killing millions of side effects to the vaccine, and then say it's killing millions of people.
We've got to go. We could talk about this forever, but I want to give you a final word, Andrew, on that. Do you have anything else to come back to Fraser on?
Well, it doesn't matter how long it takes. The truth will come out. It will come out who's funded this eventually, and it will come out about the side effects from the vaccine. Unfortunately, last week's excess death figures for, I think, second week of March, 22% above the 5-year average, 2,540 excess deaths. They're not statistics, they're real people. And it's going to continue, unfortunately. And we can't have a debate in Parliament about the excess deaths. How can that be? Why can't we have a debate about excess deaths in Parliament?
We absolutely should have a debate, but I think, the truth is not going to come out that the vaccines are causing it.
We can't even talk about it.
I don't think we're going to agree here, but I do appreciate you both coming on to have such a robust and open conversation about it. So thank you to Andrew Bridgen and Fraser Myers. And coming up on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be discussing whether this weekend's coronation has had an impact on the popularity and the future of the monarchy. Do not go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So, how successful was the coronation weekend? Has it left you feeling proud of the nation, the Commonwealth and the monarchy? Well, joining me to discuss this is the historian and political commentator, David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, Can I first ask your opinion about the protesters? We were talking about it earlier, and is it right that some protesters were sort of arrested before they'd actually done anything?
Well, it's a very tricky question because from the public safety point of view, it seems that there was a risk if these protesters were planning to throw rape alarms in the road, given the number of horses involved with this, that you could have made the horses bolt, which would have caused great damage not only to property but to people. So it's a very tricky question because I believe in the absolutely fundamental right to free speech, free expression and free protest. However, that comes with a responsibility on the part of protesters to ensure that their fellow citizens aren't harmed. If it turns out that there could have been a risk of harm, I think the police were right to act in this instance.
Very interesting. Now, when it comes to the monarchy, you know, there have been some recent polls that have suggested that the younger generation in particular would be quite happy if it were to be abolished. Does that mean that Charles is going to be the last monarch?
I don't think that's necessarily the meaning at all. I think what it means is that the younger generation is disconnected from the institution, as it is from so many institutions in this country, because it is not part of their educational culture. And that's a failing on the part of schools, it's a failing on the part of parents, and it was, I believe, an intention of the last Labour government for that to be the case. In many, many instances, I think the prospectus of Gordon Brown and Tony Blair was to ensure a sort of bifurcation between generations so that it made it easier for Labour to gain an everlasting majority. I think we're just seeing an aspect of this now.
So why is the monarchy so important, do you think? Why should it be embedded into school curricula?
My view of the importance of the monarchy is that it is fundamentally the safest form of head of government, of head of state that you can find. If you look at, for instance, the UN Index of Best Outcomes and of Health, 21 countries in that, 11 of which are constitutional monarchies. And if you look at the top 20 developed nations in the world, 10 of those are constitutional monarchies. I think this is a system that works well and benevolently. I would ask those who would seek to replace it, with what would you replace it that could be so guaranteed to be disinterested, to be impartial, to have no political bias within it, to be able to be a warning voice, a guiding voice, and as the King has done as Prince of Wales, to be a real mover in charity and in culture, but yet it is in its fundament absolutely disinterested.
But your critics would say that, well, it's embodying privilege, it's embodying the notion of division where division shouldn't exist.
I think that's exactly the opposite of what it embodies. It embodies duty and obligation. It embodies a sacral nature towards the work that is necessary as head of state. I think that this is the fundamental point about monarchy, and we saw this in the coronation service yesterday. It is about duty and obligation. It's about service. It's a very different concept from that which most people, I think, in the West now hold, where it is about rights and about privileges and about what they expect.
That's very well put, David. Thanks so much for joining us. But please, everyone, don't go away. A lot more to come in the next hour on Free Speech Nation. See you in a bit.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And there's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation tonight, including an interview about Joanna Cherry, the SNP politician who was cancelled by a comedy club for her gender-critical views. But let's get a news update first from Bethany Elsey.
Andrew, thank you. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom at 8 p.m. The newly crowned King and Queen have said they're deeply touched and profoundly grateful to all those who showed their support for the coronation. Tens of thousands of street parties have been held across the UK to continue the celebrations. The annual event run by Eden Projects Communities said 67,000 big lunch events were planned for today. And the royal family were out in force to show their thanks. Sisters Princess Beatrice and Eugenie were at an event in Buckinghamshire. And the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward, and his wife Sophie stopped by a lunch in Surrey. Well-wishers said the parties brought out the best of British.
It's lovely to see all the people and the balloons out and everything. Yeah, excellent.
It doesn't happen often enough to get people to get together, and they should. Like a day like this, great.
It's a very nice, creative thing to bring us all together to celebrate this, because it's a one-in-a-lifetime thing. I don't think I'm going to experience it again.
We think it's wonderful. There's so many people have come to support it, and we've even got, nice fine weather after all the rain.
And what did you make of the coronation?
We loved it. We loved every minute of it, especially seeing little Louis singing the national anthem all the way through.
Yeah, I was impressed, yeah. It makes you proud to be British, doesn't it?
The First Lady of the US, Jill Biden, was one of the special guests hosted at a big lunch by the Prime Minister and his wife outside Downing Street. Recipients of the Points of Light Award, which have been given to ordinary people doing extraordinary things for their community, were also there, as were some Ukrainian refugees and their hosts. 20,000 people have filled Windsor Castle to join the King and Queen for the Coronation concert. Earlier, the Prince and Princess of Wales surprised those queuing up for the event. And in the party spirit, William was heard jokingly asking people if they'd brought alcohol with them to celebrate. Performers include Take That, Katy Perry and Lionel Richie, as well as special appearances from Tom Cruise, Dame Joan Collins and Sir Tom Jones. The host, Hugh Bonneville, says it's going to be a great night.
There's so many standout moments from what I've seen. There's a beautiful poem composed especially for the event. There's a remarkable finale, both visually and orally, and some astonishing pop performances along the way, and as well as classical performances from Andrea Bocelli and Sabrina Terfel. So I think there really is something for everyone tonight. It's going to be magical.
The government has defended the police response to protests ahead of the coronation after complaints that officers went too far. 52 people were arrested, including from the anti-monarchy group Republic and Just Stop Oil. Amnesty International's policing experts say the Metropolitan Police may have misused new powers granted by the Public Order Bill, but the force insists they acted in line with legislation. And the Culture Secretary, Lucy Fraser, said the new powers are there to be used.
We brought in some legislation. The police said they needed more powers, so we've given them and I think then the police have to use their operational powers, their intelligence, to make the right decisions and the right calls on the day.
You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Free Speech Nation.
to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Did you enjoy the Fraser Myers-Andrew Bridgen debate? Tense, wasn't it?
Tense, but no one came to blows, so
no one
it's a
came
win,
to blows.
isn't it?
Yeah, no, I was all ready for a bit of martial arts, but didn't need it, you know? That's the way it should be. That's all about
you
free
did very well.
Do you think?
Yeah, you should be proud of yourself.
So patronising. OK, let's get some questions from the audience. Our first question is coming from Paul. Where is Paul? Hi, Paul.
Hi. Is there a winning the woke Olympics by imposing its hate speech laws?
Ireland are really going for it with the hate speech laws, and they're passing these laws, and they call these new hate speech laws with teeth, which are basically criminalising all sorts of thoughts, but particularly thoughts that might cause hate in a subjective manner. Now, Steve, I've talked a lot about this, written a book about it. I worry about this stuff, this idea of how the notion of hate, when it is applied in law, is so nebulous and so subjective. There's no way to really... basically, it's wide open for exploitation by anyone in power who wants to silence dissent.
Yeah, and it's almost the steps that then have to be taken one step before getting to the hate.
Yes.
That then they're the problems. The fact that if you own any hateful material, this will be a problem. If you are preparing hate, stuff like that. And right down the bottom of the rules, the one that really gets me is it's illegal to withhold your password if they want to try and find out what's on your computer. I've always taken pride in the fact that I come up with a really difficult password, so if I get arrested, not a chance. No one's going to say. But now...
You're thinking ahead.
Because it's good planning.
Yeah.
But now that sounds definitely more than, oh, let's stop people being hateful. That sounds... You say authoritarian all the time, and it's really easy to disagree and think, surely he's wrong, until they ban holding your password to yourself.
Yeah, no, this is... I think, look, there is a weird thing going on in Ireland, and I think it's because for a long time they were enthralled to the Catholic Church, and they've reacted against that, you know, past gay marriage and all those great things, but then they're pushing things so far the other way, kind of replacing it with a new state religion, which involves this kind of authoritarian ideas, I think. Well, that's my view of it. You come from Scotland, Bruce, and of course...
No, I do, and I won't be spoken to like that.
Well, yes, I am sorry to raise that.
I mean, talk about being patronising.
Yeah.
No, I do, but
they've got a very, very draconian hate speech bill in Scotland as well.
Well, they do, and my mum thought, because we all have to have these smoke alarms that are from the government, and my mum thought there was going to be a camera in the smoke alarm.
She genuinely thought that?
She genuinely thought that. I mean, I did kind of egg her on a wee bit. But she genuinely thought she was going to be monitored.
But I'm not
I don't know what she was saying. No one listens.
I'm not surprised, Bruce, because the thing is, when Humza Yousaf passed that hate speech law, he added a section to that bill which was about in your own home. In other words, you can be prosecuted for things you say in your own home.
Smoke alarms were a thing. The thing in Ireland, you've only got a grade A and a grade C. There's no grade B.
Right.
So grade C, I think, is the more serious one. You can get up to 2 years in prison, whereas the grade A, I think it's only 6 months and a €90 fine.
I come back to this point. How do we define hate? There are hate speech laws across Europe in various countries. Everyone's got a different definition. No one really knows what it means.
Yeah, and it's happening at a time when people are really getting skilled at making themselves feel like a victim.
Yes.
So you're effectively training your ability to identify hate.
Yes.
Which is therefore happening at the wrong time. More things will be classified as hate when they weren't intended as such and could be dealt with in a different way, but instead we just presume that if someone doesn't like a thing, it's the same as hate, and that's not true.
Right, and Bruce could accuse me of a hate crime for mentioning his Scottishness in that way.
Yeah, I could be accused of being hateful towards music because I'm a fan of Danny Minogue. Where does it end?
Well, quite exactly. Very good point. So our next question is from Elaine. Where is Elaine? Hi, Elaine.
Hello. Could you live without your mobile phone?
Well, actually, probably I should, but I couldn't. It's absolutely terrible. But this is an interesting study has just come out, which has found that teenagers, they risk being disqualified from exams just because they can't bear to part with their phones. And, of course, they can't have the phones in the exam room, but they say they have as a kind of comfort blanket. But it's almost like an extra appendage now, isn't it, Bruce? That we're just so used to having the phone around us. There's even this thing where they call it something like phantom calling, where you feel it vibrate in your pocket, but it hasn't at all. You're just so psychologically connected to your phone.
You just need the toilet.
It
could just be that, yeah.
You're willing it to call you.
You're willing it to call you. What do you make of this? Is it? I don't think it's just young people. I think people of our age, people of older generations are wedded to their phones.
Oh, my brother's terrible. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's fine because he's like my mum. He's a dullard, so it keeps him from talking. But he's on it constantly.
I hope he doesn't watch you on TV.
Well, they do. That's why I said it.
What do you make? Pay attention to that. He'll be looking at his phone.
Absolutely.
It is a worry, though, and I worry about myself sometimes when I'm walking down the street or walking through the countryside, beautiful views of sheep, and I'm on my phone looking at the...
That's just a little bit of tweaking with willpower. Like, you could look around you more, but we shouldn't... we shouldn't vilify the phone. But way before these phones were invented, I remember reading this thing at university. I'm old now, so it might not be remembered exactly, but the extended brain theory. So if you know someone knows a phone number, your brain goes, I ain't going to remember that. And that's why no one remembers any numbers anymore, because they're all stored. Now, we're carrying something that's got the internet and therefore all the information on it.
Yes.
So it is effectively part of our brain, part of our knowledge base. Our brain presumes, I know all the stuff on there, so when you don't have your phone with you, of course you feel like
naked.
Part of me's missing.
And if Elon Musk has his way, he's going to start implanting that computer into your brain, so you can access everything, which would be convenient, but it makes us effectively cyborgs, doesn't it?
Is he going to do that?
He wants to do that. It's called transhumanism.
Oh.
Yeah.
They'll definitely get my password then.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think it's scary stuff. Anyway, we're going to go on to another question now, and this one is coming from Gavin. Always like the name Gavin.
Hello.
Hello.
Are beards the next victim of the culture wars?
Well, Bruce certainly hopes not. The thing about the beard thing is this is, again, Scotland, Police Scotland. They're planning a new policy where police have to be clean-shaven, but this sometimes means that the police are going to have to shave more than once a day because there are some very hirsute men in Scotland and women. And so by the time we get to the second 4 o'clock shadow, 5 o'clock shadow, you're going to have to shave again. But this is apparently because of the masks, because there are certain, you know those COVID masks that clamp right to the face, sort of Hannibal Lecter style, right on the face. You need to be completely clean-shaven, even a stubble. And they're thinking, well, what if we have to deploy these masks again? So everyone's got to be clean-shaven. Do you think the police should have to do this?
No. I think it's a bit nonsensical. And you're right, what if you're a lady called Tracy with a furry face? That's, come on, Tracy, you can't go out now. We're going to have to imac you or something like that.
It's going to get very awkward in the police.
No, it is. Who was that thing from Batman? Bane, that had the big mask.
Yes.
Now, we don't know if he had a beard or whatever, so should they not be checking for that?
That's a very good point. What do you make of all this? You're bearded.
I'm bearded, yeah. Mainly.
Are you? Does your wife know?
I trimmed it down. Not that kind. Are they banning those kind of beards? Well, then that makes a different kind of issue.
The lavender beards.
People won't know what the hell you're talking about, by the way.
I think some of them do.
It's gay slang. Go on, Steve.
It's unworkable, surely. You can't really control. The only reason I've got a bit of a beard is because I grew one in lockdown. It came out ginger, which was a surprise to everyone. Because I did not know I was a carrier, but it turns out you can be. And I've kept it because it really hides the lack of any definition I've got on the lower half of my face. So I would push back against it. If people could see the fact that it all just goes into 15 chins, it wouldn't make me leave the police. You can't... Surely there are religious reasons to have beards. We're living in a world where you can't criticise someone for so many parts of their decision over how they dress.
Yes, it's a civil liberties thing, right?
So surely just let people have beards, for crying out loud.
It does seem very strange to me.
When's this coming in?
This week, apparently.
Oh, wow.
Well, there we go. It's your fault. It's
clearly.
Scottish police,
Yeah, absolutely.
OK, we're going to move on now. Do we have another question? We do, from Eugenie. Eugenie?
Yep.
Have I pronounced that correctly?
It's Eugene.
Oh, there. OK, sorry about that.
Would you pay $20,000 a year to eat worms and grasshoppers?
OK, well, sounds like a bargain to me. These are environmentally conscious students at North London Collegiate School, and they voted, the kids voted, to add insects to their school dinners. So they're going to have, teriyaki grasshopper and Mexican rice topped with buffalo worms. Steve? Are you a fan of this? Look, I'm a vegetarian, so I would be out there anyway. So what do you make of this?
Of course, kids voted for this. It seems like if you let a child pick what to eat, of course they go in the garden, pull out some worms, this.
These are supposed to be posh kids, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you could repackage it as, pretend it's fancy food. Fancy food just has big words in front of it. This is what as a working-class lad, I watch MasterChef and realise you don't need so many adjectives. I eat chicken, but posh people have locally sourced, free-range, sustainably reared chicken.
Yes, of course.
I eat salt, and you posh people have pink Himalayan rock salt. There's more words than my CV.
And it tastes the same, let's be honest.
Yeah, loads of it's the same. So I think if the kids want it, why not? I don't see a problem with eating. I'm not one of these people who thinks they're trying to change humanity and make us all eat bugs because they want to try and control us all.
Well, that's one of those conspiracy theories, then we're all going to end up eating insects. Where do the vegetarians stay with that conspiratorial thinking?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't do that unless there's a corn alternative to grubs.
But you already eat plants which are even lower down the food chain than bugs.
Oh, I see. OK. It's gross, isn't it, Bruce? I mean, am I just being judgmental?
I think you are. In my experience, though, is it not adults, dare I say celebrities, that are paid £20,000 to go and eat these in Australia?
It normally
so
is.
I think it's just a load of children that want to be in the jungle, that want to be famous. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, that's it, isn't it? That jungle show, what's it called? I'm in a jungle or something.
I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I am in a jungle.
Yeah.
That's the spin-off on ITV2.
I think I'm in a jungle would be a better title.
But that's the thing, we were talking about that before we come on. You're now getting bags of piri-piri worms or piri-piri...
Because of that show?
No, I think for this school, they've managed to source
But
things.
it's a punishment. In the show, am I not wrong? It's a punishment that you have to eat the invertebrates.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, in theory, it's a punishment. I imagine spending that many weeks with Matt Hancock is the actual punishment. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel appetising to me. Anyway, that's it.
Do you remember hedgehog crisps?
No, they did not turn hedgehogs into crisps.
Well, they were hedgehog-flavoured.
Hedgehog-flavoured crisps?
Yeah.
I think that's an abomination.
Well, there you go.
OK.
You heard it here first.
OK, well, look, that's quite enough of that. Up next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be talking to the director of Birth Gap, which is a film about population decline and why students at Cambridge University tried to cancel it. Of course they did. See you in a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Students at Cambridge University have tried to cancel a viewing of the film Birth Gap, which is a film about the phenomenon of worldwide declining birth rates. The documentary, which blames the trend on the, quote, pitfalls of feminism and the modern dating world, is due to be screened at St John's College this coming Friday, but critics on campus have labelled the film incredibly condescending and accused the director of misogyny. Now, I'm pleased to say the director of the movie, Stephen J. Shaw, will be joining me in a moment, but I've also got the student who invited him to speak, Charlie Bentley-Astor. Thank you for joining me. Charlie, is this evil film that the protesters are claiming that it is?
Of course it isn't. You know, it's a film covering all the different reasons why we're seeing a decline in the world's population, and it is across the world, this phenomenon. All countries, all religions are seeing this drop in the world population.
Yes.
And it's testing why are these things happening, so that's what the film explores.
But what are the critics claiming that the film is about?
Oh, well, they're claiming that the film is telling women what to do with their bodies, that women need to drop everything and have children because the world's going to collapse if it doesn't. Obviously, that's not what the film is saying. The film is mainly women who are sort of high achievers, who have prioritised career, who are feeling some regret, some of them, for not having children earlier and experiencing fertility difficulties in their later life.
And before we go to the director of the film, can I just ask you, you invited him for this screening. Mm-hmm. You wanted people to be able to come and see the film if they wanted to see the film. What did the students do to try and prevent this?
So initially they started booking, so the tickets are free, because I wanted every student who wanted to come to be able to come. Mm-hmm. First they started booking out the tickets in their sort of tens, and there's only sort of 150, and so they were just booking out the venue repeatedly.
So you'd get an empty room, effectively?
Yeah, exactly. And then they started to put hit pieces in the student newspaper, and the tactic of this is to intimidate other students and other staff out of going for fear of being associated with a misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, bigoted film.
Which is that they've decided it's all that. They haven't seen it, right?
They haven't seen it. They couldn't have seen it because its full version is not online, and the bit that is online only deals with the economic side of the decline.
Right. So they're protesting against something they know nothing about, and they're protesting against a film that doesn't actually exist. It's in their minds.
Yes.
But you wouldn't mind if they were protesting, would you? Because that's their right.
No, and in fact, I've been fighting for their right to continue protesting. You know, the venue and sort of the people I'm liaising with have sort of, you know, been saying, well, if the protest isn't going ahead, then you know, you can do the event. And I said, well, I'm not going to tell the protesters not to protest. I believe in free speech, and they have as much of a right to shout and scream as much as they want as I do to sit with Stephen and talk about the film in front of an audience.
Well, let's bring Stephen J. Shaw in now, who directed the movie. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. Can I ask you, were you surprised about this response from students at one of the world's most prestigious universities?
It's remarkable. I would say just first, though, I don't actually use the term pitfalls of feminism. Other people may have used that term, but I think it's important to explain the breadth of people who I met around the world. It was filmed in 24 countries. I met 230 people. Those people, I think, could only be defined as highly representative of the world we live in today, filmed on every continent. And it's been so warmly received by colleges around the world, by film festivals. So to suddenly have a reaction like this really raises questions to me about what it is that perhaps people feel about this movie that might be threatening to them. And I'd love to meet these people. I'd love to talk about it if they're willing. But it's quite stunning.
Absolutely, and thank you for correcting me on that you didn't actually use that phrase, pitfalls of feminism. It is indeed a phrase that was used about the film. But as Charlie was saying, used by people who haven't actually seen the film, so they don't really know what it is about. I mean, surely part of the reason for making the film is you want to start a debate, or to start a discussion about these issues, and to disagree, potentially.
Yes, and you know, the wonderful thing is when people do watch this documentary, the conversations start by themselves. They don't need me to be there at all. Wonderful conversations about the future. I mean, falling birth rates is going to become the biggest challenge, or one of the very biggest challenges of the 21st century. And the people who are going to be impacted most are younger people. And this is a documentary that simply examines pathways through life and encourages conversations. So, yes, it's quite surprising.
Charlie, can I ask you, even if the film was an openly anti-feminist tract, it's still surely up to individual students whether they choose to watch the film or not.
Of course it is, and that's what's the ludicrous thing about all of this, council culture stuff on campuses in particular, is that students have no obligation to see these films. It's not a part of their course. They're not going to fail if they don't watch the film and give a commentary on it. It's
so
like going to
let's talk about the logic behind that then. So the implication here is that they think the very presence of the film and the presence of your guest on campus creates a kind of toxic environment or spreads hateful ideas. Is that what they're getting at?
I mean, students have said things as ludicrous as the film is a promotion of eugenics without ever saying why. And this is something that the student newspaper was sort of, they made these accusations and students were never asked to legitimise these things. But it's intellectually unsafe and to some extent they think that they're physically unsafe.
I think the phrase intellectually unsafe is quite chilling in of itself. But Stephen J. Shaw, can I ask you about that? Because these students are accusing you of being pro-eugenics. That is an incredibly serious accusation that shouldn't be thrown around lightly, is it?
Well, I think anyone who's seen even part of the movie would quickly realise, in a sense I don't mind, because those who do watch it, and I believe many will, part one's on YouTube right now. I encourage anybody. I didn't make this documentary for any other reason for people to understand what's happening to the planet. I think people will discover very, very quickly the emotional stories that come out from people across the world about their lives, young and those a little older, are real stories about real people, and the idea it's connected in any way to eugenics is simply nonsense.
I think we actually might have a trailer for the film. Do we have that? Let's have a look at this.
Coming from the world of data science, I felt I understood populations are going up and that's a problem. When I saw what was actually happening, I couldn't sleep.
I think that the biggest problem the world will face in 20 years is population collapse. Collapse.
I agree. This 4-year project took me to 24 countries, and over 230 people were kind enough to give me an hour of their lives. How could it be that suddenly countries are having so few children? I needed to go and find out.
It's obviously a very interesting topic there, but you were bringing the director in as well so that you could open the conversation up. But you had, what I thought was very interesting, you had an attack from Varsity, which is the university paper, but it's clearly aligned to one side, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the troubling thing about it is that the comments that students made were published as news and not comment, which I found very interesting. And I wrote to the Varsity and said, are you going to publish, students who are pro-Stephen being on campus and free speech? And they didn't reply. And when I said, OK, well, can I have a piece alongside this sort of hit piece to explain what the film is actually about rather than what students think it's about? And they wouldn't have that either.
And a lot of students have been attacking you personally and saying defamatory things, frankly.
It's a sort of Helen Dale gave me this phrase, but she said it's politics by cooties. One of the reasons they sort of said that Stephen can't be here is because he was associating with Jordan Peterson, and that the film must be bigoted because I had appeared on GBNews and write for The Telegraph.
What's wrong with associating with Jordan Peterson?
Who knows? Again, these students never elaborate because it must be self-evident. It's obvious why, surely. But they're never challenged on these things.
Stephen, have you had this kind of reaction in any other quarters, or is it specifically coming from students?
I've never had this from anyone. It's not students. I mean, I did a screening here to international students in Tokyo, where I'm actually based. I've done screenings across the world, New York Chelsea Film Festival twice. And if you look online, there's over 15,000 comments from people who have either watched part of the documentary or heard me on a podcast like Jordan Peterson. And there's nothing like this. So where this has come from, to me, is an incredible mystery. And again, I just appeal to students to come and watch, talk to me. I'm really interested to see where this can be coming from. I made this documentary it's dedicated to young people everywhere. And that's a passion for me. So I really encourage anyone at Cambridge, whether they have heard good things or bad things, please come along, please talk to me.
Charlie, is it going to go ahead?
Well, that's a big question. There's a big question mark over that at the moment. I'm having difficulties with the venue. They want me to ensure that a sort of 90-person protest that's currently being mounted, they want me to ensure that will have minimal effect on the venue, and this protest is going to be on a public street. Well, even the police have limited jurisdictions over a protest on a public street. So they've set these impossible standards by which I need to meet for this to go ahead.
This is a common fudge, though, where they'll say the security is the issue.
Yeah.
But actually, it's a university. It's a place where ideas are meant to be exchanged, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this should be their priority.
Well...
That's what I would have thought. Can you tell me, Charlie, that before we haven't got much time, but just finally, do you think there is a general problem now with the younger population? I've done a number of talks at university. I was at Oxford the other day, actually, at Oriel College. The students were great. I thought the students were really up for debate, up for discussion. Am I just getting an incorrect perception? Are there a lot of militant authoritarian students who just aren't interested in hearing alternative views?
So I think 70% of the student population are bright, engaged, but maybe hesitant because, you know, free speech is a big topic at the moment, and students are being intimidated out of attending things. And so it's a very small constituency who are very vocal and are sort of manufacturing consent. You know, they'll say, we don't want these people on our campus. Well, who's we?
Yes.
You know, a group of 5 of you who you know, run the student body. You know?
And they're speaking on behalf of all their peers.
They're speaking on behalf, but the thing is that they're almost nominated by no one. No one turns up to student elections, you know?
Yeah.
So it's sort of this little mini racket of its own, you know. They all nominate each other and then vote for each other and then become the student body because everyone else is having fun. You know?
Which is but that's a good argument for more sort of liberal-minded students to get involved with student politics to kick the authoritarians out, right?
Well, we'll see.
OK, well, just final word now to you, Stephen. What next for the movie? You said that part 1 is already available. People can watch that online. Is that right?
That is right. Part 1 explains the reality of what's happening. birthgap.org is a website you can come to as well to review the other parts of the documentary. It will be released more generally later this year, the full 3 parts. So, yeah, I just think it's so important that people are having this conversation.
Fantastic. Stephen J. Shaw and Charlie Bentley-Astor, thanks so much for joining me. And up next on Free Speech Nation, after the Stand Comedy Club cancelled a booking with SNP politician Joanna Cherry, we're going to be speaking with poet Jenny Lindsay, who has also been targeted by activists for her gender-critical views. Stay tuned.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. The SNP's Joanna Cherry claims she has been cancelled from appearing at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe for being a lesbian who holds gender-critical views. The MP was due to appear at the Stand Comedy Club in August, but the club says some key staff are unwilling to work at the event. So with me to discuss this, I'm joined by Dennis Kavanagh, director of the Gay Men's Network, and the poet Jenny Lindsay. Welcome both. I'm going to come to you first, Jenny, if you don't mind. Jenny, can I ask you, you're a poet, you're based in Scotland. You've experienced some kind of similar things to what Joanna Cherry has experienced recently. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about that.
God, it's really, really difficult to sum up what happened to me. It started in 2019 when I called out the violence of gender identity activism, specifically the publication of a justification for beating up lesbians at Pride. And when I did that, my entire life just changed overnight. And it followed the usual pattern. Once you receive the label TERF, then it just spirals out of control. And in 2020, it all went very, very public when some of my opponents tried to get me fired from a conference at the University of Strathclyde, which then led to me obviously opposing that, which then led to the Scottish Poetry Library getting involved and issuing a very strong statement opposing the no platforming calls by poets against other poets. And that led to almighty hell and the usual open letters and all of that kind of thing. And this was all a bit insane. And then lockdown happened. And during lockdown, I had been commissioned to write about my experiences for the Dark Horse Literary Journal. And I wrote an extensive 8,000-word essay about exactly what had happened. Because unlike some other women that this happens to, I am not a public figure. I am not a household name. And it is something that has completely changed my entire life and has meant that I need to do things like this to speak publicly about what's happened. And yeah.
Well, Jenny, on you go. People are going to be very, very surprised to hear the idea that there are activists out there who think they should physically attack lesbians at a Pride event. They'll think that's insane. We've seen more and more women being attacked for instance, at Kelly J. Keene's Let Women Speak events. Physical attacks we're talking about here, not just peaceful protests. And now this with Joanna Cherry. Joanna Cherry, a lesbian who campaigned against Section 28. How is it that people like Joanna Cherry are now being painted as the bad guys in all this?
Well, I think it's always worth going back to basics with this and remembering what it is that so-called gender-critical feminists actually believe. And all that we believe is that sex is materially definable, that it is legislatively important, and also that we must have public debate and robust debate about legislation that does affect more than one group here. And that is honestly what is at the root of this issue. And what the Stand has done in cancelling Joanna Cherry is they have not just cancelled Joanna Cherry, they have continued this ridiculous discourse that those gender-critical principled views are somehow so hateful that people would be made unsafe. And I'm afraid that they've also really done a disservice to fellow comedians, comedians who've booked their venues for upcoming tours and who now actually, I've seen a couple of comedian friends, are having, their fans say to them, look, I'm really sorry, but I simply cannot come and see you perform in that venue. I will not support a venue that no platforms a women with perfectly reasonable beliefs. And they put a target on all women's heads, these venues, when they do this. Yeah.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And Dennis, I want to bring you in on that point, because this is what happens, isn't it? The people with perfectly legitimate, commonplace views are labelled as hateful and transphobic, and that legitimises violence against them.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're putting a target on the back of perfectly decent people who have unremarkable views. Joanna Cherry has extremely moderate views. She's in favour of equality for everyone under the Equality Act. She supports the Section 7 gender reassignment characteristic. She just happens to have a legally protected view under the law, under Forstater, that sex is real, it's important and it's immutable. And as J.K. Rowling said, this is the link with the feminism point. Without sex, there's no same-sex attraction, right? So if Joanna Cherry wants to make an argument on the basis of lesbian rights, and lesbian meaning same-sex, then that definition of sex is important. And it is irresponsible in the extreme for outfits like this to hide behind their staff and behave as if she's in any way hateful. This is senior King's Counsel. This is the chair of the Parliamentary Equalities Committee. This woman fought Section 28. She's a gay rights legend. And for them to smear her in this fashion and to smear homosexuals in public life, like Kathleen Stock, like Julie Bindel, like Alison Bailey, like Simon Fanshawe, one of the founders of Stonewall, Harris speaking at Gonville and Cleese on Friday this week. For homosexuals in public life to face this, and women more generally, for us to watch what we have to say. Joanna Cherry compared it to a new McCarthyism. To me, it feels like a new Section 28, feels like a new closet.
So let me ask you about the legal issues on this. Is the Stand behaving lawfully by deplatforming Joanna Cherry? Well, if I can quote Dr. Michael Foran writing about this, his view was that it will almost certainly had behaved unlawfully. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Equalities Act, you cannot directly discriminate against a protected characteristic. The argument here, and it seems to be made out on the fact, is they have said, we don't like what you think, you can therefore not perform here. Now, I can tell you, in law, as Dr. Foran and many other academics have said, that is no different to saying our staff don't like gay people, don't like black people, don't like Muslim people. And the fact that it's happened is one thing. For them to put a statement out and crow about it, in my view, is quite disgraceful. Jenny, can I come back to you on this? I mean, surely part of the point of these kinds of no platformings of people like Joanna Cherry and indeed yourself is that part of the point is to intimidate others into silence, to sort of send a message and say, your views aren't acceptable and you better shut up. And that does work, doesn't it? Because a lot of people, they just stay well out of it.
Yes, absolutely. It really does. And on one level, I do understand why some people feel too frightened to speak out. I mean, I'm hardly a brilliant advert for it. It has really, really affected my income and my ability to make a living. And the thing is, the one thing that remains to me as a writer and a performer is platforming myself. And if venues are unwilling to even allow me to hire a space to do a spoken word show, then, you know, it really is time's up on this kind of thing. And we have to hold the line in this. And I have been working desperately for the last 4 years to try and get some of Scotland's leading lights and literary organisations to hold the line. I mean, we're talking about women being threatened and facing economic penury for being feminists. I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. And what I've had the last few days from this cabaret against hate speech guy, I feel absolutely no different emotionally from when in 2014 I had a stalker and police told me not to advertise where I was going to be performing because somebody might come along and harm me. And that is exactly the position that these activists are putting me in today, and it is disgraceful.
A lot of we've got two strands here, haven't we, Dennis? You know, there's the feminist aspect and the way in which women are being mistreated in all of this, and then gay people as well. And it does feel like we're stepping back in time by decades, doesn't it? You run the Gay Men's Network. It does feel like this is a new homophobia, right?
Yeah, as I said, it feels like a new closet. It feels like a new Section 28. And you'd think from what happened that Joanna Cherry was going to give some inflammatory speech at this event. Can I just make this point? She was there she was supposed to be there just to discuss her life in politics, just to discuss the independence campaign, what it's like being an MP. So it's not as if contentious speech is being silenced here. What's happening here is that her entire position in public discourse and her ability just to tell us a little bit about her life. Heaven forbid gay people might have role models they could go and listen to, talk about their life in politics. That's the right that we're losing. We're losing the right to hear from her.
Why didn't the venue just say to the staff, OK, you don't like it, so you don't have to work that night, we'll sort that out, don't worry about it? Why are they capitulating to teenagers working at the bar?
It's such a good question, isn't it? And I mean, we work on the basis that the statement's correct, and it wasn't just people working at the bar. They said it was staff and management, so apparently it went all the way through. But if that is true, and it is a gutlessness not to stand up to staff, and we've seen this again and again and again, particularly in artistic industries, we've seen this plenty of times in publishing. Well, the answer has to be this, doesn't it? We can't have equality law run in several sectors, but then just say, oh, doesn't count for that, doesn't count for that. Because if we do that, we have inequality before the law, and we have no-go areas for gay people and no-go areas for feminists. And that's completely contrary to civic discourse.
Dennis Kavanagh and Jenny Lindsay, thanks so much. Now, coming up in the final part of Free Speech Nation, we're going to be looking at the videos that have gone viral this week and answering some of your unfiltered dilemmas. Stay tuned. Thank you, Dennis.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, every week, as you know, we dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media. So let's have a look at our first clip. This is the video of a man who managed to sneak through the security cordon and glide past the Prince and Princess of Wales so he could collect his prescription. Shocking, isn't it? Don't you think? Like, he should be beheaded, really.
Do you think? Would he have to pay for his prescription? Because in Scotland you don't.
Actually, I don't know about that.
OK, but we can maybe find out.
Yeah, what do you make of that, Steve? Is that rude to do that?
I mean, no. And actually, this is the thing. If you're about to be arrested for protesting as an anti-monarchist, just say, no, I'll get my prescription filled. I'll let you straight through, and that's how you get around the
Did he
laws.
not notice them there? Is that the thing?
He's probably not interested.
No,
he just wanted his meds.
He probably just needed the meds.
Yes.
Well, we've all been there, Bruce.
Oh, I hear you, sister.
I mean, you can't get up without a good few pills in the morning.
Exactly. I'm Valley of the Dolls, the musical.
Right, we've got a video now of MP Jacob Rees-Mogg being the epitome of British cool after being evacuated from outside Buckingham Palace.
Anyway, we're just getting the latest word from the Metropolitan Police, and I don't know what it is.
Evacuate now.
We're going to have to evacuate now?
So I'm very sorry to say that it is good evening from me for the time being, as I think that was probably a controlled explosion in the background. That's what it sounded like to me. We will no doubt find out later.
I mean, he's unflappable. I would have screamed the place down.
Well, I mean, you have to remember that there have been images of him on the green benches having a nap.
That's true.
During his paid work time.
True.
So, you know, why would it bother him?
It doesn't bother him. I mean, the bang is in the background. How is he not more alarmed?
Well, just a small issue. I think I'm right in saying this technicality. The building is evacuated. Right. He wasn't evacuated. If he was evacuated, he would have just done a massive toilet.
Oh, I see. You are a bit of a grammar Nazi, aren't you?
Well, there is if a bomb goes off near me, I would be evacuated.
And finally, let's move away from the coronation on that lovely image. The production team here have found me this video of a dog riding a chicken. Now, it's obviously very cute. What does the chicken think about that, though?
I'm not falling for that. It's like Bernie Clifton. It's the dog's legs. The dog's legs are through it, and it's a fake chicken.
It could be that. Do you think the chicken is being exploited there?
I don't know, because I do remember watching a debate on Good Morning Britain. It was one of the mornings I was up for Lorraine, and they were asking guide dogs. A woman was complaining that guide dogs weren't being asked the consent to become guide dogs.
Really?
Genuinely,
okay.
Not a lie.
They can't speak, though, can they? That's the issue.
What, dogs?
Yeah.
Mine could, but that's another story. Sadly not with us anymore. But I don't know if the chicken had been consulted. Whether or not the chicken had been consulted, the chicken looks quite happy.
I love that we can turn that clip into something that we can get outraged about. I think that's great. We have to think about the rights of poultry.
Yeah,
you know,
this is the future.
This isn't the kind of chicken you would eat, by the way. That looks totally organic.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it could bring you KFC and the dog brings you the Andrex. I mean,
I saw that on the train going to Leeds on Friday. That was not pleasant.
OK, well, let's move on to the part of the show where we talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. Now, our first dilemma has come in from Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer, for sending this in. Jennifer says, I've been dating an amazing, beautiful, talented man for 2 months. I've just started staying at his house and he has started to pick his toenails in front of me. It's absolutely disgusting, but I also hate the fact he's already comfortable enough to do it in front of me. Does this mean he doesn't respect me? Yes. Yes, that's absolutely what it means. I mean, it's absolutely vile.
This is relationship loopholes. This man just thinks he can do anything he likes.
Right.
He's foul. She should get rid of him. Jennifer, you're worth more.
And you don't know what Jennifer gets up to, of course.
Well, no, but I wouldn't imagine she'd look scabby in a pair of Birkenstocks. I mean, those feet were positively diseased. They look like the Prince Charles sausage fingers cake.
I don't know if that was necessarily the feet. I think it was a picture of a foot.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was sent in by a viewer.
I mean, that would be... I think the problem in that relationship would be her at that point, if you started secretly photographing your partner's feet.
I think she just split up. I hate them both.
I mean, Steve, is it a slippery slope? You know, once you start to do that, you know, pick your toes in front of your partner, it means you don't respect them, right? You'll be cheating, and then you're, you know, embellishing the funds.
People always make it out as somehow you're so close because you can show this vulnerability. No. In one of my first long-term relationships, we had that moment of like, oh, who starts breaking wind in front? Oh, that cute moment. Then after that point, I must have been outdone at a ratio of 9 to 1. I breathed in more Trump than I let out through that entire relationship, and it's not worth. Keep the mystique, keep the mystery.
Absolutely. Just be hygienic more than anything, you know.
Have some dignity.
Have a manicure, for goodness.
Stop writing into this programme. Deal with your problems.
No, they need us.
No, that's true, actually.
These people need us.
Take that back.
OK, so we've got another dilemma now. This came in from Reggie. Thank you, Reggie. Reggie said, I've saved £20,000 for a deposit on a house, but it's not nearly enough. Plus, with the climate catastrophe that will destroy the planet and a cost of living crisis that has no end in sight, should I just enjoy my money now and buy loads of cool stuff?
I doubt Reggie knows what cool stuff is. I'm not going to lie, OK? This is ridiculous. If you've got £20,000 in a cost of living crisis, pipe the bleep down.
Right, really?
Yeah. Come on, Reggie, give us all a break.
When you have this kind of apocalyptic worldview and you think it's all going to end anyway, you may as well just go out and party all the time and spend all your money, surely.
Now, I recently watched The Last Holiday with Queen Latifah. She was misdiagnosed, and it was awful. The film should be expunged from the history vault. And I say to Reggie, no, keep that money, but work a bit harder so you can get £40,000. Then you'll be able to buy a mansion in the Highlands.
Very quickly, Steve, from you, any thoughts on Queen Latifah? Or indeed this?
I'll stick to the topic, maybe. Yeah, keep the money in the bank account, and then by about 5 years from now, that will buy you a tank of petrol.
There we go. Wonderful advice from both of my panellists there. Thanks so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation this week. This was the week when a politician was deplatformed for wrongthink, the Tories crashed and burned in the local elections, and a new monarch was crowned. Thank you so much to my panel, Steve N. Allen and Bruce Devlin, and to all my guests this evening, Andrew Bridgen, Fraser Myers, David Oldroyd-Bolt, Dennis Kavanagh, Jenny Lindsay, Stephen J. Shaw and Charlie Bentley-Astor. And, of course, thank you very much to John Cleese. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, you can do that. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com. You can come along. We've got free drink and food. Have a great time. Stay tuned, by the way, for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's coming up next. And don't forget, Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. That's the late-night paper preview show with comedians taking you through the next day's stories. Farewell.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to the latest GB News weather forecast. Well, it's all changed again after a fairly bright Sunday. We've got rain moving in tonight and spreading east through Monday. We can see at the bigger picture, ridge of high pressure brought us the dry weather for many of us through Sunday, but it is all change, as you can see. Weather fronts moving in from the Atlantic, bringing outbreaks of rain and brisk winds too. The rain already moving in this evening across western parts of the UK, Northern Ireland, eventually western coasts of Scotland, England and Wales. Some of this rain could be heavy at times. The best of the drier weather holding on across the far east and southeast, but increasing cloud here. Not a cold night at all. Temperatures remaining in double figures right across the country. It's a bit of a grey start across many parts. Monday morning, outbreaks of rain for western parts of England and Wales. This sweeping its way slowly eastwards. Could be heavy at times. Best of the brightness holding on to East Anglia for the longest. Sunshine returning behind the rain, but also some heavy showers. These will be thundery across Northern Ireland. Could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures lower compared to Sunday, but still in any brighter spells reaching close to 20 Celsius. Into the evening, England and Wales cloudy with further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy at times. The blustery showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland should ease as we move into the early hours. But overnight, generally into Tuesday morning, it stays quite cloudy. There will still be some bits and pieces of rain around, and temperatures, well, again with the cloud holding up in double figures for many of us. So it means a grey start again Tuesday morning. Best of the bright spells across the north and the west. The east cloudier here, particularly across northeast Scotland with rain and drizzle through the morning. Into the afternoon, we will see some heavy showers across eastern parts of the UK, whilst in the west, further heavy showers move in here. And again, in any sunshine, temperatures lifting, stays unsettled Wednesday and Thursday, further rain and showers.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin,